Ever wondered why one of history's greatest pharaohs so openly married his own daughters? Well, today we read diving deep into the world of ancient Egypt to explore the shocking truth behind Ramesses II's unusual family ties. Ramses II, widely regarded as Ramses the Great, was arguably one of the most powerful and longest-reigning pharaohs of ancient Egypt. He ruled for 66 years, a reign that saw him engage in numerous military campaigns, construct iconic monuments, and most remarkably, marry his own daughters. Now, before we dive into the reasons behind this seemingly bizarre practice, let's take a closer look at the man himself. Born in 1279 BC, Ramses came from a dynasty of powerful rulers. His father Seti I had set the stage for his son's rise to greatness. And upon Seti's death, Ramses ascended to the throne, marking the beginning of a new era in Egyptian history. During his reign, he was not just considered a ruler, but a living god, the earthly embodiment of Horus, or Ra, the sun god. This divine status carried with it certain privileges and responsibilities, and one of those responsibilities was marrying his own daughters. But why, you might ask? Did he do this? What were the motivations behind these unions? To understand Ramses' actions, we must first delve into the religious beliefs of the time. The ancient Egyptians believed that their pharaohs were descended from gods and were themselves divine. This belief in divine lineage extended to other members of the royal family, particularly the daughters. When Ramses married his daughter, he was uniting himself with his bloodline, ensuring the continuation of the divine blood that flowed through his veins. These marriages were not merely symbolic, they were an integral part of the religious order. In fact, they mirrored the relationships of gods in Egyptian mythology. One of the most prominent examples was the marriage between Osiris and Isis. Osiris, the god of the underworld and rebirth, and his sister wife Isis, who represented magic and motherhood, were key deities in Egyptian mythology. Their union symbolized the cosmic order, and their son Horus represented the pharaoh. By marrying his daughter, Ramses was aligning himself with the divine order, reaffirming his role as a vessel of the gods. But there was more to these marriages than just religious symbolism. There was a strong political dimension as well. By marrying his daughters, Ramses was consolidating his power and ensuring the purity of his bloodline. In doing so, he was preventing any potential rivals from gaining power through marriage alliances. This practice was not uncommon in ancient royal families. It was a way to keep the power within the family and prevent it from falling into the hands of outsiders. Furthermore, these marriages were a means of cementing the bonds of loyalty and obedience within his family. By marrying his daughters, Ramses was sending a clear message to his subjects. Anyone who defied him would not only be challenging him, but also disrupting the divine order. This served as a reminder to both his subjects and his family of the consequences of disloyalty. Now, while we understand the political and religious motivations behind these marriages, it's essential to address the elephant in the room, the age gap. In most cases, Ramses was significantly older than his wife, sometimes by several decades. This might seem shocking to us today, but it was not unusual in ancient Egypt. Age gaps in marriage were much more common, and the difference in age was often seen as a symbol of wisdom and authority. For example, when Ramses married his half-sister and wife, Queen Nofret, he was around 50 years old, and she was only 15. Despite the significant age gap, their marriage was considered normal and acceptable. But what about the daughters who married their father? How old were they at the time of the marriage? It's important to note that there is no record of the exact ages of Ramses' daughters at the time of their marriage. However, based on historical records and archaeological evidence, it's estimated that they were likely in their late teens or early 20s. For example, Ramses' eldest daughter Bintanith is depicted in several monuments and temples alongside her father. In these depictions, she is shown wearing the crown of Upper Egypt and is referred to as the Great Royal Wife, a title typically given to the pharaoh's chief consort. This suggests that Bintanith held a prominent position in the royal court and was likely of marriageable age. Another daughter, Meritamen, was married to Ramesses shortly after he took the throne. This suggests that she was likely old enough to wed and fulfill her role as a queen. Ramses' second wife, Nofret, was also married to his father Seti I, before she became the Great Royal Wife. This pattern suggests that royal daughters were typically married off at a relatively young age. While it is impossible to know the exact ages of all of Ramses' daughters at the time of their marriage, it is safe to say that they were likely in their late teens or early 20s, a finding that aligns with other royal marriages of the time period. However, it's crucial to recognize that these unions, while seemingly intimate, were primarily political and religious ceremonies rather than expressions of romantic love. In ancient Egyptian culture, marriages were often arranged and were primarily a means of strengthening alliances and continuing the bloodline. While love and affection could develop between spouses, it was not the foundation on which these marriages were built. Let's consider the case of Bintanith again. As the eldest daughter of Ramses, she likely had little choice but to accept her father's proposal. Her role as the great royal wife was not just a title, it was a duty. It was a way to ensure the continuation of the bloodline and the maintenance of the religious order. Bintineth's decision to accept her father's proposal was likely driven by her sense of duty and loyalty to her family and her role in maintaining the divine order. Similarly, other daughters like Meritamen and Nebetui, who also attained queenly status through marriage to their father, were likely motivated by a sense of duty and obligation rather than romantic love. Their marriages were a means to legitimize their father's rule and to secure their place in the royal hierarchy. Moreover, it's important to note that these marriages were not necessarily exclusive. In ancient Egyptian culture, polygamy was common among the elite, and pharaohs were allowed and expected to have multiple wives. Therefore, while a daughter may have been married to her father, she may have also had other husbands, including her brothers. This practice, while shocking to our modern sensibilities, was a way to maintain the unity of the royal family and to reinforce the pharaoh's position as the head of the household. Finally, it's crucial to understand the religious context of these marriages. Ancient Egyptian religion was polytheistic and animistic, and the pharaoh was considered a living god. This meant that the pharaoh had access to powers and privileges that were denied to ordinary mortals. Marrying his daughter was not only a means of maintaining the bloodline and consolidating power, but also a way to stay connected to the divine. In ancient Egyptian thought, the pharaoh's duty was to maintain the cosmic order, and marrying his daughter was an integral part of that duty. In conclusion, Ramses II's decision to marry his own daughters was not as unusual or shocking as it may seem to us today. It was a common practice in ancient Egypt and was deeply rooted in religious, political, and cultural norms. By marrying his daughters, Ramses was maintaining the divine order, consolidating his power, and fulfilling his duty as a pharaoh. While these marriages may seem strange to us today, they were a normal and accepted practice in ancient Egyptian society. Ramses' decision to marry his daughters should not be seen as a sign of perversion or dysfunction, but as an example of how different cultures have different norms and beliefs. If you enjoyed this journey into ancient Egypt, stay tuned for more fascinating historical insights. Don't forget to hit the like button for more content. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the wonders of our shared human history.